Okay, I'm really glad to be here. And like Val said, she and I have been married for, it'll be 10 years this summer. And part of why I'm here as somebody that she says is like good at people, which I think is a great phrase. I want that on a business card of some kind. Adam Clark, good at people. Is that, so my background is I went to, my undergraduate at Ball State was in telecommunications, so video production. And the thing in video production that I gravitated to the most was first-person narrative storytelling. So that's like documentaries, where someone sits there and you don't see the person behind the camera who's asking the questions. The person behind the camera's job is just to draw out the best story possible. And other people wanted to like make their own movies and do other things, like tell the news. I wanted to make people tell their own stories in like a beautiful and eloquent way. That's what I gravitated towards. And I loved it, and which is a really natural extension of my personality, as I'll tell you some more about that too. So I did that in undergrad, but as it turns out, it's really hard to get a job where they want you to just ask people questions and have fun all the time. So I ended up teaching at a high school for 2 years, which was hilarious to think about, because I was 20 when I started, so I was about 9 seconds older than the kids I was teaching. So I did that for 2 years, and it was great. But then I decided to go back and get my master's degree. So I decided that if people is the thing, that I wanted a master's in something that would kind of refine that at an organizational level. So I went back and got my master's degree in public relations. And that's kind of what I do for a job now. I work a 9-to-5 job at Brotherhood Mutual Insurance Company in their marketing department, basically helping the organization relate to the people that should care. And so it's kind of people, but it's just on a larger scale. So that's me, kind of in a nutshell. And more importantly than that, I really do just enjoy people. Like, I'm one of those guys that's super annoying to introverts and like kind of hard to be around, because I want to talk to you, and I don't know a stranger. And that's got its upside, but it can be pretty abrasive and crazy. But right now I've got a microphone, and that's what you want me to do. So it's good. So I want to start. Part of my background that I maybe wouldn't typically share in a large room full of people is that I used to be a part of an improv comedy troupe, which is like, there's a few people that are extremely good at that, and then 99% of people just make you feel super awkward. And like, you want to laugh just to dispel the discomfort in the room, right? So I was in an improv comedy troupe at Ball State, and I want to do an exercise with you to get our blood flowing and our mind thinking. So what this is going to involve is picking a partner, and would anyone volunteer to just come up and demonstrate this with me? Just for funsies. You're not going to look dumb, I promise, and you're not going to have to try and make people laugh. Yes, you'll be great. Perfect. Thanks for raising your hand. Come on up. Nailed it. Oh, are you coming up? Oh, you're good. Yes, come on. Yeah. Great, thank you. A legitimate volunteer. I was just going to snatch you up. Great. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say a sentence, just real casual conversation. Doesn't need to be anything in particular. And what's your name?
Vanessa.
Vanessa, I'm Adam.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. What Vanessa is going to do is she's going to start her sentence with the very last letter of my sentence. Okay? So, Vanessa, beautiful weather out there today, right?
But what do you want
So it's got to be a sentence that starts with T. Because right ends with T.
The weather is very nice outside.
Exactly my sentiments. You nailed it. Okay, so it's going to be, what I want from you guys is 2 exchanges. I'll say 2 things, she'll say 2 things. And you have to listen all the way to the very end to hear that last letter, and then you decide how to start your sentence, okay? It's going to be painful, and it's going to be challenging, and what I want you to focus on is how it makes you feel. Okay? You do not have to succeed. Just try, okay? So stand up, find a partner. Thank you, Vanessa, for helping me. I really appreciate that. Great job. You guys did awesome. Okay, so just a quick bit of feedback. How did that make you feel? What were you thinking? How did that, anybody? Very awkward? Yes. Anybody else very awkward? Kind of tough? Why was it hard? What was it hard? Was it hard? Why was it hard?
Because you couldn't think of what you were going to say from the end.
Yes, right. Yes. Anything else like that? That's a perfect answer. Yes? You're kind of put on the spot. That's right. I apologize to do that. You threw yourself into it. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so Shelley really articulated kind of the heartbeat behind this exercise. In improv comedy, and I think also in life, listening brings the best out of the team. It brings the best out of the other person, gives them the space to talk. And in improv comedy, one of the things they always teach you is you're funny when you make the other people on your team funny. And I think the same is true of things that aren't humor, but you're better when you make people on your team better. And what's difficult about this exercise for me, and I don't know if you guys relate to this, is that I start thinking of what I'm going to say long before you finish your sentence. Anybody else relate to that? And the reason I'm able to do that is I am brilliant, right? And the reason you're able to do that is you're brilliant. You were made incredible. I mean that very sincerely. Your mind is a phenomenal tool. Think about this just for a really quick second. All I'm doing right now is taking thoughts in my head and using my voice to disturb the air around you. It's just vibrations in the air, right? And what you're able to do in rapid time is take those vibrations, bring them in through your ear, make sense of them to the point where if I stopped right now, you could probably finish my
Sentence.
I would have also accepted sandwich from your Frozen fans out there, right? But that's an incredible thing what you just did. Right? Think about it. Like you're making sense of what I'm saying, and then you're able to even think ahead of what I'm saying. You're incredible. And I think that when you begin to realize that you're incredible, you'll feel okay with letting other people be incredible too. Like if you don't have to like jump in there and speak, talk over people, think ahead of what you're going to say, just let other people be incredible, that you'll bring the best out of them. So I want you to feel encouraged because you're awesome. And I want you in your realizing that you're awesome to be able to celebrate other people's awesomeness. And so that's what we're going to talk about. How do we do that? How do we do that? So one thing I've thought of is, have you ever been, just to kind of reinforce this idea of how awesome you guys are, have you ever heard of someone who's come back from like a really amazing natural phenomenon like the Grand Canyon or like Yosemite or the great, what's the big waterfall in Buffalo, New York, Canada? Niagara Falls. Have you ever talked to somebody who's come back from that and felt like they just had like a religious experience? Like, oh man, you see it in pictures, but then you just stand at the foot of this thing and wow, right? Well, what I want to just remind you of is that God made everything and said it was good, and then he made us and he said, nailed it. Very good. So you possess more wonder and beauty and depth than any of those like natural phenomena. You do. You're amazing. And what you can begin to realize as you live into your amazingness is that other people are too. And you're standing at the feet of God's most wondrous creation every time you talk to somebody. Your job is to just draw it out, right? You'll come away from that and be like, man, you should meet this person. They're amazing. They've got this incredible story. This is how they met their husband, or this is how they came to know the Lord, or this is where they live and what they do for a job. Everybody's got something beautiful to offer just by being a person, right? And you're no different, like you do too. So how do we do this? How do we draw this out of each other? For me, I recently read a book called Living the Gospel in the Gray, and it's written by a guy who is a campus pastor at Purdue University, and he talks about the posture of curiosity as the means toward really showing care to people that you don't know. Curiosity. It's very simple, kind of blatantly obvious, but curiosity for me has been this guiding sort of principle in getting to know people recently that's just totally reshaped my view of how to love people. Curiosity has really shaped my view of how to love people. And there's this weird old axiom about how cats die because of curiosity. Are you familiar? I've never quite gotten why that kills cats, okay? But curiosity kills cats, but it doesn't kill us. In fact, I would say curiosity kills awkwardness. And curiosity kills relational uncertainty. Curiosity kills a lack of trust. I'll say that again. Curiosity kills relational uncertainty. So inasmuch as you don't think that I like you, when I'm curious about you, and when I show you, no, I care about what you're saying, I'm going to listen all the way to the end of what you're saying, and I'm not going to start my next sentence until you said your very last letter of your last sentence. Then you'll know that I like you, and the relational uncertainty goes away. Trust is built. Judgment is gone. Fear is gone. Curiosity kills those things. Not cats. For Pete's sake, not cats. Okay? So I want to give you just an illustration, a story, example of this. And those who are at Northeast this last week, I preached and I told this story, so this is going to be just beating a dead horse for you. But most of you don't, and that's great. I'm the worship pastor here at this church as a part-time thing when I'm not being an insurance marketing guy. So that's how we got the keys to the building. And I told this story this last week because curiosity, you guys, really has been working on my heart in a major way. So recently I traveled for work, Brotherhood, not Northeast, and went down to Little Rock, Arkansas. And I was talking to a guy on the plane down there named Jason. And it was late at night. I didn't have a ride to my hotel. And he was like, well, how are you going to get to your hotel? I said, well, I'm probably going to take a cab. And he said, that's stupid. And I was like, oh, that seems a little harsh. But I don't want to be stupid in the eyes of a stranger. Tell me more. So that's another thing about marketing. If you want your marketing to go well, have strangers tell other strangers that they're stupid for not using your product. Don't write that down. That is not noteworthy. That is a joke. Okay? But it got me convinced. Like, what are you selling, Jason? Because I don't want to be stupid. And he said, you should try Uber. And so I did. We hit the ground. I downloaded Uber. He talked me through how to do it. And I got a ride. It was crazy, right? I mean, who has used Uber? Pretty incredible stuff. And if you did it before a couple of weeks ago, you're cooler than me because you got there first. Okay? So I hit the ground. I downloaded Uber. I get this little picture of a guy named Glenn, spelled Glynn. So super cool spelling of his name. Got a beard. Just a cool guy, right? So I'm like, I'm going to ride with a cool guy named Glenn wherever I go. So I go out, and I'm totally strange about this. So I go out, I'm like, I've never done this, Glenn. Do I sit in the back of your Pontiac car? And he's like, no, you can sit wherever you want, man. So I threw my stuff in the back, and I sat in the front with him. And I just decided before I got in the car, I'm going to make it my business to care about Glenn, to be curious about him, just to see what that would be like. And his experience in that, my experience in that, that's all I'm going to try and do. I don't have any axe to grind in this conversation except for caring about Glenn. And so we got through talking and chatting, and he's telling me about Uber and how long he's been driving for them. And I stopped him and I said, Glenn, I'm almost certain that whenever you drive someone, you have this same conversation. You're probably talking about Uber and how the compensation structure works, how you get paid, how I pay, that kind of thing. What do you want to talk about? What do you wish someone would ask you when they hop in your car? And he was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And it was like a hard, awkward moment for both of us. We both sat in the awkwardness of that for a second. But then he started to talk about himself. He's like, well, I'm from Little Rock originally, and I've got this many siblings, and this is my family's like, and starts talking about his family background. Starts sort of uncovering his family background. And as he's doing that, I'm listening, and then when he's done talking, I ask more questions. So instead of like, he's done talking, and I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm from a family background that's just like that. Instead of that, which is fine, I was like, what's that like, man? Tell me more about your family. And so he keeps talking, and then finally it gets to the point where he's sharing about what he believes, what he really thinks about stuff. He talks about how when he was 17, his cousin convinced him that agnosticism was a good way to think. And I had this moment, as a believer in Jesus, I had this moment where I think, this is the moment where I'm supposed to say, you're wrong, Glenn. No way, man. There is but one way, and his name is Jesus. But I stopped myself and instead, you know what? I'm just going to keep talking. Keep asking him questions and letting him talk, So I just said, Glenn, what does that mean for you? How does that work? What's it like to be agnostic? Just genuinely curious about what that might feel for him. And so here's what was like really kind of funny, and if I'm being honest, kind of adorable from Glenn's standpoint, is we got to my hotel, and he throws it in the parking lot, and he just wants to keep hanging out. And this is like after midnight his time, after 1 a.m. my body time. We're just hanging out in the parking lot of the Hampton Inn or whatever. And it didn't complete my review as a rider, And he was like prolonging the conversation because if you don't complete your review, you can't get more invitations for rides. And so he wanted to just hang out. Not because I had this sort of like Jesus product to sell him, but because he felt genuinely cared about. And what I want to say about that, you guys, is when someone knows that you're a fan of them, you've already crossed the biggest hurdle. So everybody loves themselves. Everybody does, and that's okay. I'm not saying that's bad, but we just all do, right? If you're honest, in a moment of honesty, you probably say, I think I'm pretty good. So when you show someone that you're a fan of them, you've got the most important thing in common. They like themselves. If you like them too, then you've already crossed that biggest relational uncertainty threshold. All I was just doing was just asking Glenn questions. There's no formula. I ask him a question, he answers, I listen to his answer, and formulate another question based on that. Just continue to draw him out. That, to me, you guys, is curiosity. When I say curiosity, that's what I mean. And I'm not saying I've got this thing nailed down. I've tried this one time, okay? So I got a lot of work to do. But I'm inviting you into this project with me. Let's be more curious and see that the people around us begin to feel like, man, that guy likes me. And here's one other thing I'll say about the Glenn experience, is he does not know that I've been married for 10 years. He does not know that I have 4 kids, that one of them is adopted from the Congo, that I was in an improv comedy troupe. He doesn't know anything about that stuff. You want to know what he does? No, is that I care about him. I really care about him. And that's all he needed to know to throw it in park and want to hang out with me, is just to know that he was cared about. So, this is another weird thing about me. This is just some self-deprecating, like, vulnerability. Now you're hearing just like maybe too much. But when I was like in high school, I was fully convinced that I was going to have my own like late night talk show. Like I really thought that was going to happen. And I was like timing out David Letterman's career. I was like, if he retires at this certain point, I'll be at this age and I'll nail it. It'll be perfect. I'll just take his show. And I thought he was just going to like send me a letter in the mail. You know what I mean? Like, we've heard you're funny. Come take the show. You know, like I didn't have a plan for this. I just thought it was going to happen to me. But one of the things I began to do, no joke, this is something I've never even told Val. I told Val, I was like, I'm going to share a story and something about my brain that I've never even told you, and it's going to weird you out. So everybody gets to hear this for the first time today. I used to pretend when I was in the hallway in high school that I was hosting a late night talk show. And then everybody I talked to in the hallway was my guest. And so when they would come up to me, I'm like, Adam Blakey, how you doing, buddy? It's really great to see you. You know, and I would ask him questions. How was your weekend? And I'm interviewing him because he's sitting in the chair and I'm hosting a late night talk show. You know, and I did this with everybody. And I used to pretend that this camera crew was following me around. And I'm like, never going to have the same conversation twice and never going to use the same joke twice. Because I wanted the camera crew, this invisible crew, to follow me around and be like totally entertained by my life. Super weird, right? I mean, you can nod in agreement. That's a weird thing to do. But what people around me got the sense for is that I was going to light up every time I saw them. And when I didn't, they knew I was having a super bad day. But they had this expectation. Adam likes it when I come around the corner between 5th and 6th period. He just likes to see me. And I did. The thing is, you practice that long enough and you just start to like people. Because they enjoy seeing you, you enjoy seeing them, and just enjoying the presence of another person just cultivates so much trust and so much fun and so much relationship. And then as an extension into sort of the business world, whatever I was into, they were okay with being into. Because our relationship was the most important thing. Right? So not that you need to pretend that you're hosting a late night talk show, but think about what a person who's hosting a late night talk show does when their guest comes on. Like Jimmy Fallon is a phenomenal example of this. He's so good, right? Anybody? He's so good. And what he's good at is he's totally fine with getting lost in the person that he's interviewing. He lets them be the funny one, and he's hysterically funny. But he lets them entertain him. He lights up. He smiles. He asks them questions, and he lets them tell the stories. And the stories probably aren't even that good, but he's laughing, and so you're laughing. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, if you do this for other people, your life can feel that kind of exciting. And so will theirs. I think it's just a totally made up statistic, probably, but it's that whole like 90 to 93% of communication is nonverbal. I'm not sure what study they're citing when they say that, but it's true, right? It's fun. I mean, experientially, it's true. When someone feels a certain way, that almost trumps what they're saying. And when people can feel your sort of insecurity or your lack of desire to talk with them, they can feel that even more than you saying, "Hey, it's good to see you." You know, "Hey, good to see you." But like if your nonverbals communicate, it'll trump what your words actually are. Like they'll feel it off you, you know, they'll feel welcome. Okay, so a few things about like lighting up when you see people. Smiling is huge. And some of these things, I wanted to point this out. I just recently watched this. This is Danny Johnson's Magnetic Influence. Super good. Super good. Val introduced me to, she just went with a few other girls in the room to a conference down in Florida that Danny Johnson hosted. She's awesome. She's really like got her stuff together. She's a bit intense. And if I feel a bit intense, it's like me with even less of a filter. So buckle up, okay? Right? So, but it's really good stuff. And so she's got these 10 points that she calls the core rapport methodology, and it's all about how to develop good relationships. And because that's trademarked and I want to be original, I'm not going to tell you those things. You should just check her out. But some of the things we're going to talk about are influenced by what she said. One thing she makes a big deal about is smiling. I love it. Smile when you see people. It totally breaks down so many like relational barriers just by smiling. Make good eye contact. People love eye contact. Even people who don't like eye contact, they like eye contact. They like to be known and seen. Reflecting empathy. Reflecting empathy. If someone's telling a sad story, it would be inappropriate for you to be laughing, right? So just reflecting empathy. If they feel sad, show them that you're sad with them. If they feel happy, get in on that. Don't be distracted. Don't be, checking your phone, that kind of thing. That's a sidebar that we could go on for a long time about. That's like hiding in plain sight, isn't it? Our phones are just the enemy of good relationships when you're sitting live and in person. I challenge you, when you're sitting down for a conversation with somebody, be it your husband or your wife, Nat, you and me, only dudes in the room, your husband or your wife or your friend or your kids, where can you put the phone where it won't distract you from your conversation? And even saying out loud, wouldn't it be amazing if you were about to sit down over dinner with somebody and you said, "I'm shutting off my phone because I need you to know that being with you is the most important thing." So just clearing out all of those kind of distractions, phone primarily, crazy distracting. But reflecting empathy, giving people the ability to feel things and letting them know that you feel it too. Mourning with those who mourn, if you will. Rejoicing with those who rejoice. I learned this technique when I was in college and I was studying video production, but this is terrible wording, but midwifing eloquence was a concept they taught me in interviewing. Here's what midwifing eloquence means. When you want someone to say, "I was happy about blah, 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 blah," you ask the question, "Hey, were you happy about blah, 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 blah?" And then they start their answer with the thing that's built into your question. But what that's predicated on is you listening and knowing their story well enough to ask them a question that leads them into eloquence, that makes them sound like their best self, right? So they're talking about a certain event that happened over the weekend, and instead of just like, "How was that?" you ask, "Was it fun when so-and-so said this thing to you?" And you give them this, you serve up a softball that they can just knock out of the park, and then they sound brilliant. Right? That's midwifing eloquence. It's investing deeply in the conversation and allowing that person to sound brilliant. They are, right? You are standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon with this person. They're beautiful and deep. So it's your job to just draw it out. That's midwifing eloquence. Serving them up softballs and letting them knock it out of the park. Asking great questions, listening for their response, and then asking more questions. Just try that as an exercise. When you're talking to somebody, count maybe even how many questions you ask before you put statements in there. And what's really cool for me in the business world is when I sit in a meeting where I come out guns blazing and I'm ready to just share my great idea. You don't have to raise your hand for this. I can be alone on this. But does anyone just come in the room thinking that they've got the best thoughts? Anyone else just come in the room thinking, "I'm going to nail this. Like, I've got such good ideas." And they're going to be blown away when they hear from me. Nobody else? It's okay. It's okay. I might be alone on this, and it's okay. But I do that, right? I have this sort of underlying assumption that I'm right, that I'm entertaining, that my ideas are good. And what's interesting at work is the times when I come out and I'm like ready to share my idea, the room gets quiet. The room gets less fun. People are like less willing to share their ideas because I've spoken first. But when I allow other people to share their ideas and like draw it out of them, even in meetings that I'm not running, it's really fascinating. In meetings that I'm not in charge of, if I'm the one asking questions, people start looking to me as the person who can answer them. Questions really do control the conversation. Not in a manipulative way, they just bring the best out of it. So if I sit in a meeting and instead of thinking first, what can I tell them about what I think, because I assume that I'm right, I'm going to just draw the best ideas out of everybody, introverts and extroverts alike. And I sit there quiet, and I ask, and then finally, it comes back to me. And then I lower the boom on them. It's like, here's the moment you've all been waiting for, the idea, but they're ready to hear it because they've gotten their stuff out there. And then my idea is better because it incorporates all of the other stuff that I've heard. Does that make sense? Like I'm taking stock of the good idea that came from over here, the good idea that came from over here, and then I'm able to articulate an idea that encompasses everybody's thoughts. And it's a winner because I waited. Okay? So those are just some ideas. And what I want to say that's kind of like the punctuation mark on all of those ideas is recognize that smiling, eye contact, reflecting empathy, midwifing eloquence, asking good questions has nothing to do with your personality. Write that down. None of that stuff has anything to do with your personality. Your personality is not an excuse not to be personable. Because I get it. Sometimes it's harder for you to do the being excited to see people thing. But it's not a reason not to do it. People still deserve your best. Because they're people. They're the Grand Canyon. Right? They're awesome. They deserve our best. So, I want you to just consider this. I used to work at a malpractice insurance company. For whatever reason, my marketing career has centered around insurance, which the 6-year-old version of me that thought I was going to play in the NBA would be like, dude, so lame. But it's cool. Insurance is cool. And I found that out. So I used to work at a malpractice insurance company, and we would write all these like articles and ads and these risk management tools about bedside manner, about how to act when you're in the room with a patient. And I finally was just like, guys, can't we aim higher than this? Isn't this the obvious stuff? Like, why are we telling doctors to just be nice? Why aren't we talking about like the angle of the anesthetic needle or not sawing off the wrong leg? Like, why don't we talk about the fun stuff? Why are we doing this? And then my boss said, well, 85% of all malpractice insurance cases, when a doctor's accused of negligence or malpractice in some form, could have been avoided by washing your hands and being nice. You want to know why? Because doctors aren't in the business of providing medical care. Doctors are in the business of people. And so are you. This is something that Danny Johnson hit super hard. You are not in the business of selling a product or a service or an idea. Your business is people. Doctors are not really in the business of providing medical care. Yes, of course, that's their product at some level. But their business, the way that they make money or lose tons of it in malpractice cases, has everything to do with people. And much less to do with medical care. It's interesting, right? Your product is awesome. I'm a believer in the oils. They help me sleep better? Well, no, I'm about to step over the FDA lines. They improve my wellness overall. Fair? I can say that. Overall wellness has been improved. I don't have snotty noses. I'm just say it. I can't stop myself. But I believe in the oils. But your product is not oils. Your product is the relationships. Your product is investing in other people enough to where when you invest in them enough to uncover that need, or it's like my kid is throwing fits all the time. or whatever things I can't say, you're able to say, oh yeah, man, I feel that. Let's talk about this. And then you introduce them to your product. But the business that you're doing is investing in that. So Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart and also Sam's Club, Walmart's cool older brother, is quoted as saying this: there is only one boss, the customer, and he can fire everybody in the company, from the chairman on down, simply by spending his money somewhere else. That's pretty good, right? There is only one boss, the customer. And he'll fire you, and he'll fire everybody that's in your upline all the way up to the Royal Crown Diamonds or whatever, by being like, this relationship doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't feel invested in. That's your business, you guys. Is just availing yourself to quality relationships. I mentioned Danny's video for that. Okay. So I want to just end by saying that you don't have any goal in this life, be it a career goal, family goal, even the goal of any material possession goal, which is not bad. Like I want to own this certain type of house or live in this neighborhood. Those aren't bad goals. But you don't have any goal that isn't fundamentally contingent on relationships. Consider that. Those career goals that you've got, those family goals, the material possession goals, any of your goals, when you put that point on the horizon and you start to chase it down, you say, this is the kind of person I want to be. Recognize that all of that is deeply connected to the people around you. Does that make sense? Has this been helpful? Do you guys have any questions? Because I feel like I am ending kind of early. Do you want to talk about anything more? Family, occupation, recreation. Message. Weird. Thanks for calling me out on that. Recreation is the R. So, who's your family? What are they like? What do you do for work? What do you do for fun? Do you mountain bike? Do you disc golf? Those are my things. And then message. How does, and what's really cool, Val and I were talking about, Val's like, how do I do that? How do I talk about oils? I'm like, well, oils are everywhere. Like, it's not like you're selling vacuum cleaners, or it's like you have to somehow uncover that their carpet is terrible to sell your product. Oils are all over the place. So it doesn't matter what their needs are, there's an oil for that, right? Like, there's a way to connect it back to your experience with oils because your product is so broad and yet so specific. You sell an amazing product that I think really lends itself to this idea of being an extension of good relationships. Because it's everywhere. Once you finally uncover the thing beneath the thing about what someone wants in life, you can be there with the thing that you can provide. It's a cool product. Good question. Is that, okay, so that's like really more of like a formula, the form thing. Those aren't the top 5 questions. I also just like, well, I ask stupid questions. I ask like really dumb questions. Like, you know. Yeah, like things that make people feel like they can't lose. Softballs. What's your favorite color? What's your middle name? Where does your middle name come from? Are you named after somebody? And you can chase things down to their very end, you know. So those are stupid. Those are way less potent and powerful than the form questions. But it is okay. And in fact, that's one of the things they would teach us to do in video production was ask dumb questions that make people laugh that they can't get wrong. If you give them the opportunity to just nail it, it'll give you on-ramps to the more difficult questions where it's more nuanced and there's not necessarily a right and wrong. It might make people feel uncomfortable if you just went right for those. Just serve them up some softballs first. Good question, Lauren.
Do this whole treating everyone like they're the Grand Canyon. That is really passionate what you're saying, and I think
Cool.
this whole day is worth just hearing that statement. But I struggle with it because some people are annoying or
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
I mean, I genuinely want to love people.
Yes.
How do you overcome that, you know, and get to that place where you treat every single individual like the Grand Canyon, even though they're arrogant or whatever?
Yeah, no, man, I think that's such a good question. And the first answer I want to say before I would.
Can you repeat it so that?
Oh yeah, so when people aren't easy to love, when they're abrasive or their personality just doesn't, when you're not clicking, or when they're annoying, anything that would be kind of off-putting, how do you overcome that and still treat them like the Grand Canyon, the depth of beauty that they are? And I think that if you, I don't know. First of all, I don't know. I'm super in process with all of this. Like, I'm really learning this very recently. But I do think that part of it is if you have an agreement with yourself before you start a conversation with them about the kind of care you want to give them, you can overcome so many of the things that would be off-putting if what you're in it for is you. So if you come into an interaction with them saying, you know what, they're going to be annoying. I already know it, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to do it as much as I can, enjoy them. And sometimes you can disarm these kind of people with compliments. Compliments that are distinctive. So instead of like, maybe they're a critical person, or maybe they're just somebody who's great at chucking grenades from the sideline, but never coming up with their own kind of ideas. You could say, man, I see that you're like a really critical thinker. So I want to ask you a question about what you would do different. So like you draw them out and you bring them to the edge of their criticism of things. So instead of just like, man, they're critical and I don't want to be around them, you ask them why they think that. And you draw the humanity out of them. Because sometimes that's just a mask for not feeling lovable. So you got to show them that they are lovable. So they'll stop being annoying. Good question. How did I do on that?
Awesome, thank you.
Good? Okay, because we can talk about that more. But yeah, I think if you just... So one of the things that I think Jimmy Fallon does so well is he thinks ahead about his conversation. And not that you need to have like a script. Scripts are great, but you don't need one necessarily if you have agreements in your head about how you want the conversation to